大家晚上好，欢迎大家来到国际培训大咖五十谈，我是顾立民。上一期第46期，我们非常荣幸的请到了 Dr. Gary DePaul，给我们讲解了很多关于领导力方面的知识，特别是领导力和管理的区别，管理到底是什么？那么领导力又是什么？那么领导力在我们日常的工作当中都能够为我们创造哪些价值？特别是领导力七秘籍，你记住了吗？它将是我们的红宝书，非常的简便易行，可以指导我们日常的领导力如何发扬我们的个人的领导力，来带领团队等等，赋能他人等等。所以上一期内容是非常的丰富，感谢 Dr. Gary DePaul， 感谢你多年来在这个领域里面的不断的研究，希望呢以后能够向你学到更多。今天晚上我们又请到另外一位国际上非常著名的大咖，他的名字呢叫 Dr. Mariano Bernardez， 马里亚诺·伯南戴兹博士。他呢出生在阿根廷，长在西班牙，现在呢在美国居住了已经好几十年的时间。他是国际著名的改进咨询的这个绩效改进的这个顾问。那么他同时呢也是罗杰·考夫曼中心 Roger Kaufman Center CEO， 也是 Performance Improvement Institute 叫做绩效改进研究所的总裁。那么我们今天晚上呢将向他询问，由于他在拉丁美洲国家、拉丁语世界做了很多的西班牙语这个国家里面做过很多的项目，所以呢，我们今天晚上将聚焦于这些西班牙语国家，特别是拉丁美洲。那么拉丁美洲培训和发展到底是什么样子呢？那么绩效改进在拉丁美洲是发展的如何呢？另外 Dr. Roger Kaufman 考夫曼博士的他的宏大的思维是如何在拉丁美洲给这些国家产生价值的呢？那么我们下面闲话少叙，下面我们隆重请出 Dr. Mariano Bernardez. Hi, Mariano. How are you?
Hi, George. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you again. It's so nice to meet you via the internet. And this is probably, I said to many guests, this is probably the closest we can get.
Indeed. It's a great opportunity.
You bet. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much on behalf of all the viewers in China and other developing countries. Welcome to Training Master Series. It's our great pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. First of all, for our audience, you and I are colleagues, but not everybody knows about you. So for our audience, would you please introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us where you grew up, where you went to college, what you studied, and tell us where you live and work now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my name is Mariano Bernardez. I am an international management consultant. I currently live in Chicago, United States, most of the year, but I also work from Barcelona in Spain and Buenos Aires in Argentina. I was born and raised in Argentina from Spanish parents, and I live in the United States. I've been living here for most of the last 20 years. So I hold 3 passports, let's put it that way. My main background is I have a PhD in education. I have studies in finance from University of Chicago, and also in distance learning from the University of Phoenix and Walden University here in the United States. So I'm a mix also, both in terms of places where I live and professions.
Can I remind you, you can share the screen of your relevant information slides while you're talking, and then you can unshare, and then you can switch sure. On and off anytime you want.
Let's help people to figure out. Here is a short summary of.
Can you do the full screen?
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a resident in actually 3 cities. I spend most of my time in Chicago, but I also work from Barcelona and Buenos Aires, at least before the pandemic was the regular thing. I'm an international management consultant. I I have degrees in education, psychology, business, and finance from University of Buenos Aires, University of Chicago, Phoenix, and Walden. I'm a CEO of the Performance Improvement Institute and the Kaufman Center here in the United States. My career basically started as partner in Andersen Consulting back in the 80s. I work also as a senior consultant for the United Nations Development Program in Latin America, Africa, and the United States. I'm founder and board member of multiple companies in Latin America, Europe, and US. I think I'm going through the number 8. And I've also been a ISPI board member, member for life of the Society, International Society for Performance Improvement. And I founded in 1998 the global network that connects 25 countries around the world in a network of performance improvement related disciplines. And I'm currently the executive director of the Performance Improvement Institute. So this is to have an idea of who I am or what I'm doing.
Great, great, thank you. And actually, to formally address you, we should address you Dr. Bernardez, but since you and I, we know each other so well, so I just call you Mariano. But but in other occasions, formally we have to address you as Dr. Bernardez. But for this interview, we will not.
I have an anecdote about that. As you know, here in America, we are not very formal in terms of addressing, but
right.
With the doctor thing, I was working in Mexico, waiting in a hotel for a cab to take us to the university where we were going to do a presentation. And then a guy in the parking lot comes next to me and said, "Dr. Bernardez?" Yes. And he handed me over a recipe. "You know, I need this medicine. Can you help me with this?" And I said, "No, I'm not that kind of doctor. I don't recommend you to ask for a PhD to help you with medicine." so much for doctor. Okay. It's a very dangerous
sometimes it can be mixed up with medical doctors. Thank you, Mariano, for your very highlights of, I mean, a very brief introduction of yours. And thank you so much. And you have a lot of achievements, and you have been with the International Society for Performance Improvement, the ISPI, for many years. And you were a board member, as I am now. I'm a board member of ISPI too, but you were a board member way before I was. I became a board member. So it's 2004, 2006. And you're also the CEO of Kaufman Center and the PII, the Performance Improvement Institute. So you have done consulting projects, learning and performance improvements in many countries. As you told us, you were born and raised in Spain, and you lived in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, and now you have been in the United States. So your footprint has been in Europe, Latin America, and North America. So, but Europe, Spain, we need to ask you about Spain. But can you tell us a little bit about Latin America, because very few of us know the conditions of learning in Latin America. Can you share with us some basic information? Thank you.
Sure. My pleasure. Let's start with the map.
Perfect.
Yeah, when we talk about Latin America, we think of different things. We are talking about 435 million people living in actually 3 regions: North America, where we have Mexico; Central America, where we have all the Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Panama. And crossing Panama to the south, we have another 15 countries that form what we call South America. Most known of them, among them are Brazil and Argentina. But this is an area in cultural transition with different speeds of development. So you have countries that are considered emerging countries like Brazil or Argentina, or countries that are already in OECD, the Organization for Economic Development, so considered developed countries like Chile, that recently, 10 years ago already, joined the OECD. And we have countries that are considerably less fortunate economically, like Central American countries and the north part of Brazil. And so we have different speeds, different challenges in terms of learning. Now, we are working in the concept of societal performance, because in order to achieve business results, sustain growth, you have to deal with creating an environment conducive to support companies. So one of the key differences between the way we work in the United States and Latin America is, in Latin America, you always have to think in terms of the community and the cities and the areas where students and people are trying to learn something for. And this drives us to the idea of mega regions, the idea that several countries connect and open to world trade. For example, in the Arizona-Sonora area, that will be this area between the southern part of the United States, Arizona, and the northern part of Mexico, where the state of Sonora is actually a region between two countries that works pretty much like, I would say, the way Hong Kong and Xinjiang work in China. So we also have to work in terms of developing what we call high-speed value chains, trying to organize between two or more countries. And this creates a lot of opportunities, but the other challenge is learning technology has to adjust to different conditions, and also to a growing number of startups and social innovation. And what we call e-performance, that is using online technology for things like this. So this would be a general panorama of what learning and performance looks in Latin America. So in order to get there, for example, this is an example of a university, what we call a performance center university. We moved from graduating individuals to graduating organizations. So if you see at the left-hand side, you have educational programs that train and develop skills at the individual level. But then, in order to make these skills produce an impact, we have to develop organizations. So our model of university, Performance Center University, graduates work creating a company. So they create their own jobs, let's put it that way. Each, for example, PhD students, the motto of the program says, get your company a PhD. So we graduate the company, which is the doctoral projects, for example. And the idea is also, in order to make this company viable, you have to put this company in a market. So we go through the process of acceleration and putting the company in different markets. And that way, when the company works in the real world, you get a societal return of investment that makes possible an organizational return of investment. And this, in turn, because the graduate gets a job, a permanent job, they create their own companies or participate in the creation of a company, they create then an individual return of investment. So it creates like a virtuous circle. And that's the way basically we work in Latin America in order to develop programs that help people to develop their own communities and create new wealth.
Okay, great, thank you. So learning and performance, as I just saw your introduction, through your introduction, that I saw learning performance in Latin America are quite different than the rest of the world, probably. The rest of the world, probably in what I know in mainland China, in North America, and other European countries. And probably this is because of their economic situation. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's it's a point of departure. For example, how did I get into this? In 1998, I was working in a very successful conventional performance improvement process in a northern Argentina oil company that have a polyduct, a pipeline that send the products from the north of Argentina to the south. In the area where the refinery was, we have done everything from management improvement, we had process improvement in place. So the company was really doing great, but we found one day, the CEO of the company called me and told me, Mariano, we have a problem here. Our best professionals don't want to stay because the communities are really difficult. There is a lot of social problems. Our kids go to schools with kids that have problems with drugs. So we have a lot of social problems. So we started working in turning the management program inside out. So we decide, okay, we are going to apply this to developing the community. And over 2 or 3 years, we called Roger Kaufman, and we developed a program that created a series of small companies for people in the area. And the return was that this company I was working with was basically manufacturing gasoline, and their sales in gasoline, their market share climb up. So the reason why was because people thought this is our gasoline, this is our company. So there was this process required in order to keep people in the company and at the same time make the company more successful by making people, their customers, more successful. That was the idea. In Latin America, that's a very important concept.
Excellent, excellent. I saw your, I now understand your example. So what you did is to convert the ownership to disseminate the ownership from one company to their customers, let them own the small piece of the entire company, and then they work it out. And then they work very hard to make profits on their smaller company. And then they add up to the parent company, which is still the big company. And then their share goes up because of all the smaller company. They have the ownership. They have the full engagement.
Yes, and they also have their own, sometimes they were their own business. The area, like it happens with a lot of oil towns, you know, oil has, they call it the curse of oil because it creates high-paying jobs, but it basically opts out all other kinds of activities. The company we were working in was originally a state-owned company that was privatized in the 90s. And the problem is people receive options to stay in the company once privatized or take the money, a big buyout, and like $120,000 in 1995 was a lot of money. And what they did is they started, they had been working all their lives in an oil company. So they didn't know about doing other businesses. And of course, all the businesses they started doing with their money failed. So when we got there, they were having serious trouble making a living. And we discovered that in the area where they were, this is 1997, they had all of them own land, but none of them have ever used the land to produce anything because they have very good jobs in the oil company. So, but they send their children to an agricultural school. So what we did is we put them, their children, to work in developing their own land, and they started cultivating a small plant known as soy. We created 120 agribusiness and farms. I came back in 2004 to finish my report, and several of these people who were unemployed when we started were now millionaires because they got, of course, the soy price up, but also because they have their own business. So it was a mix. They were participating in the company, and also the company helped them to start. And of course, they were using much more gasoline because they have tractors, they have machinery, they were manufacturing. So it was the smart thing to do was to think, okay, this is now 100% market, but we can make it 2 or 3 times bigger by just expanding the economy. And they have a lot of wealth that they don't use. So we basically, the idea that Roger mentioned many times is we can do much better by doing good. So if we help our customers succeed, we are going to get more revenue for us as a company.
Exactly. The value, our value is determines the value that we create for our clients or customers.
Exactly, exactly. And in the plans that education has to be focused on, for example, the example I gave you, these students that were going to agriculture school, they were basically not getting any jobs because in spite of the fact that they have land, because their parents have very good jobs in the oil industry. But once they discovered that they could use their own land and apply their knowledge, of course, I'm talking about kids, but they were in their teens or close to 20 years old. So they became also involved in developing the economy of the region. So that was another thing that education in Latin America, like in many other places, tends to be separated from employment. What we do is to connect. The idea is that when you join a program in a university, you have to know what are you going to apply. So we focus in graduating the project rather than just individuals. So instead of writing a dissertation about the importance of X or Y and running an experiment for that, we put them to develop, for example, a company that will produce food for a certain market and work with other students in creating the company, incubating the company, and putting the company in the market. So they learn all the business skills by doing business.
Great, bravo, bravo. I want to say this is exactly what Roger Kaufman is. Want to check with, is bravo Spanish?
Absolutely, very good Spanish, but well pronounced.
I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Bravo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a English borrowed word as well, and borrowed from Spanish as of course. It is exactly what Roger Kaufman always promoted, advocated about the societal changes, and that's a perfect example of mega thinking. Mega thinking is societal at different levels, at organizational level, departmental level, or small team level, and also individual level. So if we take care of all these and build linkage between all these 3 levels, and that's perfectly mega thinking, and because you're creating impacts to society at different levels. And to me, your example did, because everybody, all the 7 examples, some people, they became millionaire. That's not easy. That's easy to say, yeah, but very hard to achieve.
Exactly. But it's as usual a large percentage of chance of opportunity, but you have to be able to seize the opportunity, because for in other parts of the country where they didn't use this kind of performance technology, what they did is they remain poor because they didn't use their land for that.
Right. So, there is a, yeah, as you said, you're correct. There is a curse about oil. I mean, you bring high paid jobs, but there are also some negative effects coming after it, and sometimes if the land is it's dried out, and then it become a ghost town or something like that. But we've seen that in history. But your example is perfectly kind of a mingled up. And I hope I'm just interested. How are they doing now? And that this example happened a couple years ago. Am I right?
Yes, this happened like already 20 years ago. Now they are in 2nd generation farming. They are exporting. They export to China even.
Exactly, the beans, I think.
And some of them have started developing factories to process oil from soy and soy seeds. So they started all the vertical integration after 20 years, of course, of continuous growth. There is another story, example of what happens in, we had this experience in Argentina in 2001. That's a very common history situation in Latin America. In 2001, there was a big financial crisis, and the country got into default. So poverty rose from 15% to 50% in just 1 year. In 1 year, there were 5 presidents because every government failed and had to form a new government. In that situation, Argentinians became basically despondent, thinking, okay, we are not going ever to get rid of this. And for a long time, they said, well, the best way to solve the Argentinian problems is Ezeiza. Ezeiza is the airport. So there were 1 million Argentinians left the country, but salaries were very low. There was no activity, but some of them decided that they were staying in Buenos Aires and in the main city, and they were architects, engineers, and restaurant experts, and they knew English. So they worked with this same model in putting announcements to offer these neighborhoods as places for visitors and tourists and attract tourism. So all of a sudden, the old neighborhood, the name was Palermo. That was a very old...
Palermo, right? Palermo.
Exactly. It's a very... Now, today, when I say Palermo, someone who knows Buenos Aires thinks of a very fancy, very touristic place that has subsections like Palermo Soho, because that has lofts. They took all the old houses that were dirt cheap because of the...
How do you spell Palermo?
P-A-L-A-R-M-O. Palermo.
Oh, P-A-L-A-R-M-O. Got it.
Exactly, Palermo. So it comes from a place in Italy from the original immigrants. But this was a place that had only, the kind of neighborhood that was the Rust Belt in Argentina. So they were very humble houses, etc. But when the crisis came, the architects and the engineers saw the opportunity to turn these old houses into lofts. And a house that was worth $35,000 at the down of the crisis was worth $350,000 a year after for tourists and investors. By the way, Palermo Hollywood stands because they had a lot of people working in the film industry in Argentina that were out of a job. But they were excellent professionals. And it was very cheap, and they were great places to film. So Francis Ford Coppola and other directors were invited to this neighborhood to film. And that's why the neighborhood became Palermo Hollywood, because a lot of Hollywood films were filmed in that neighborhood. And that way, the neighborhood turned from being a place where people didn't want to stay into being one of the most attractive and high-priced real estate property in Argentina. So again, it's the idea that if you try to use the crisis as opportunity and you develop with people business plans, because here, again, universities with this model were able to help people to say, okay, we are now comparatively cheap, but we have high skills. What we have to do is to create some kind of market-making innovation so they can connect through the internet, for example, with the United States. Are you familiar with Tom Shoes? These are
Tom Shoes.
Tom, T-O-M, Tom Shoes. Let me look at if I can. I will show you here. This is a. Okay, this is an American company now.
Tom Shoes.
Yes, this is one of the award winners. Let me share the screen.
Okay.
this company, so here's Tom's shoes. Well, Tom's was originated in Argentina. These shoes, and you can see here, they still have the Argentinian flag on the back. What happened is an American came to Argentina to learn to play polo. And he noticed that there were a lot of kids without shoes. They were shoeless. So they decided to create a social business. And said, okay, we are going to do this formula. For each pair of these shoes that were local shoes that we sell in the United States, we are going to give a free one to kids that are shoeless in Argentina. And they started building this in small slums in Argentina that have no jobs. Today, Tom's is a company, the shoes called Alpargata, and basically,
okay.
Exactly. And it was a countryside people kind of shoe. Here you can see some of these. And basically, now is we are in business to improve lives. So this idea is that people buy in the United States shoes, and these shoes this model has been replicated. So they provide shoes and other benefits to children in Argentina, in Latin America, or in Africa. And this is a company, they made an IPO, it's one of the big companies in the United States. But again, they combine e-performance with a social business. That's another of the things we try to teach how to do through the Performance Improvement Institute. So they made tons of money, needless to say, but at the same time, they help millions to get not only shoes, because they also have programs to improve social conditions and microloans, etc. So they have done a lot of other things, always with this idea that that people will pay extra to do good.
Thank you. So as I see it, that the examples that you gave, the performance improvements from what you described in Latin America is different from those in North America. Completely different approaches. You relied on more on the mega planning more because on the societal changes as a kind of a spearhead, right? And then you apply the mega planning and mega thinking system, and then to create, and then to solve social problems. Whereas HPT in North America is more like, we've gone through different models and different, but always focus on organization. Organization has this problem, has business problem, but even though we focus on, we focus on, we have a longer drive to focus on societal impacts, but more focus on the business itself, for business results, for revenues, for to lower people turnover, efficiency. Am I correct?
Well, it's relatively different in one way. First of all, United States is not an homogeneously rich country. In each one of the cities, we have areas that are less benefited from the economy. And for example, the Institute is now currently working with Detroit. In Detroit, we have neighborhoods that are basically were destroyed in the last economic downturn in 2000.
Right. Detroit declared bankrupt a couple of years ago. Right.
And many American cities have the same problem. So there is a huge tendency in business in the United States called social responsibility. And these are companies that are making money and they have profit objectives, but they discover that the objectives only can be achieved if you address some of the problems of your communities or your customers' environment. Therefore, for example, Amazon. You think of Amazon and you think of, okay, we have a company that is obviously one of the top companies in the country. But Amazon at the same time is helping as a platform small business to sell their products. So the most important part of Amazon from the social impact point of view is the fact that it has millions of what we call entrepreneurs or small entrepreneurs that can sell their products through the platform to different markets. And same thing happened in Argentina with another company similar called Mercado Libre. We helped this company to start, and it's one of the unicorns. It's a $5 billion company. This company that is just an Amazon in Spanish has more revenue than the oil company, the main oil company in Argentina. It's 3 times more worth more. So there you have the idea. In the United States also, if you look at companies as Whole Foods in the food markets,
right.
they also have Whole Planet Foundation. So we gave them the Kaufman Award because this Whole Planet Foundation helps local growers to produce their products and sell in Whole Food stores. Those of us who buy in Whole Foods, we pay maybe 20, 30% more, but we know that the product is organic, is environmentally protected, and also that is helping people because we are buying from local stores. So we get fresh products instead of products that are in frozen and driven a long distance. So for a lot of companies, doing the best way to make a lot of money and be successful and get also the prestige is precisely trying to make money through helping people. C.K. Prahalad, well, he said, he titled an article in 2002 called Serving the Poor of the World Profitably, meaning this is not philanthropy. Philanthropy is giving away things, but not expecting anything in return. This is what Michael Porter calls it strategic philanthropy, meaning the companies do this with the idea that we are going to make money and make more business. For example, Tom started with the founders started making the shoes themselves, and then they did it in slums with people who were basically working out of a job. But now they have a company that employs thousands of people and makes one of the top earning producers is at the top of the stock market. They did the IPO 10 years ago. So the idea is that in these days and for younger professionals, making something that that is worth in terms of social impact is also very motivating. So it helps also to attract people, talented people who want to work with the purpose, to say, okay, this, what we are doing is helping people to live better. We are fighting illnesses, or we are helping people to build their own, to be self-reliant, not to give away things, but to give people ways to make a living and become clients, by the way. That's what Amazon does. When Amazon allows you to sell your products on Amazon platform, it's helping you, but they are helping themselves because you start selling through the Amazon platform. So they are making their own clients.
Right. That reminds me that one of the Nobel Peace Prize laureate is from Bangladesh. You know, the poor people's bank. You know, Muhammad Nurus. Yeah, Nunez, right?
Yeah.
He is. He's. I think his same concept that I enable the people. I do not just give away, because if I gave away, that's philanthropy. But what I gave away to help you, but you have to give me back. And then, but I provide a loan to you. That's why I'm a bank. I'm not just social organization. Just give it out for free.
And guess what? After the success of Grameen Bank, funded by Mohammed Yunus, Citibank, Bank of America, JP Morgan, all the banks today in the highly developed countries have microloans. have microfinance, because they not only help with that the markets in places like India, they also produce microloans for their own country for people in the lower level, so they help these people to become customers. So this Prahalad used to say that multinational corporations can basically create new products by starting to test the products in less developed markets. For example, we all think about the smartphones, cell phones. If you remember, at the beginning, the cell phones were extremely expensive, thousands of dollars, and they were the size of a brick. And only the very rich people use them in cars. And, you saw James Bond holding a phone inside the car. And that was like, okay, if you are a mega millionaire, you can have those things. But where this modern cheap cell phone was developed was in Africa. So, and the idea was, what do they need a cell phone for? Well, they went to Africa, and the Africans discovered that a cheap cell phone helped them to sell their products by negotiating the price on the phone. For example, if you have to sell bananas, and bananas are in a tropical country, they will last a few hours before getting rot. And what they did is, before, they have to go to a market, and the price was fixed by the guy in the market. Say, okay, if you don't like the price I pay you, just go elsewhere. And you cannot go elsewhere because the bananas are no good. So they were forced to accept any price. But with a cell phone, they could call different places and go to the place that have the best price. In average, the cell phones increase revenue and income for African farmers in 35%. And then became, of course, these were $10 cell phones.
Right.
With the $10 cell phones, these are ours. We are not paying $10, but they are very cheap phones, per use phones, and these came from very underdeveloped countries. So this big business basically was invented because of addressing the necessities or the constraints of Africa.
Right. Michael Dell and also Gateway Computer. If you remember the big cow, they were thinking, because I have friends that are working there, they were thinking about making $100, and even later, the HPs and the Apples, and they're thinking about, can we make $100 computer to underdeveloped countries and developing countries where they can use it. They can navigate the internet. Of course, right now the Starlink is there, up in the sky, Elon Musk for the Starlink, and then that make everything even faster. And so that model works. And coming from China is a developing country, coming from the 80s and 90s, I can testify. I can add another proof to what you have said, like the Standard Chartered Bank, Citibank, and other banks, the BC, they all come to mainland China or come back to mainland China to make money at the beginning of the 80s and the 90s, when there's no bank. There's only one bank in China, it's the People's Bank. It's everything for everything. And then gradually they came in very early, but they helped the China build the economy till today. And they're still flourishing. All these foreign banks, they're doing very well in China. So I think the big mega banks or companies, they can be benefited by launching mini projects, by helping smaller countries. I think that's Roger was correct. Roger was correct by think big, have the mega planning, and think big, think long term, think multiple hierarchies thinking, and then you can generate multiple benefits for the future, because your benefits comes from different levels.
Yes, and also think in the terms of a client. The real people. So if you know your customer, you are in for, and you look at the needs as gaps in results, not lack of. Because of course nobody in Africa will come to you and say, you know, I need a phone. I would say they didn't even know what the phone was. But you could see, if you understand the results that they were trying to achieve, for example, selling the famous bananas, and what they were able to accomplish, how much they were making for, that you could see, you know, if these guys have something to be able to call in advance before they go walking from one village to another, they will get a better price. And then you have the idea of actually that was an African manager for General Electric, was the guy who originally developed the idea of the cell phone. And everybody told him, you're crazy. He said, no, I'm not crazy, I'm African. And I know the people will respond if we give this to them at a lower price. And guess what? They use China to produce the chips. They say, well, we don't have to go to Intel, because what they need to do is basically to be able to place a call. And they don't need to own the phone. They can rent the phone for use. And then you have the phone ladies in India, groups of women that basically have a payphone and share the payphone to sell their goods. They sell food, they sell different things they produce. And again, that created in India a big push and expanded the market, because when we talk about countries, both in Latin America and in Asia, you are thinking in terms of large populations. So if you enable the population, you increase the purchasing power, you automatically create a market, a much bigger market. So unlike the case of Europe, where the market is already there and you are fighting market share, here in Latin America and in emerging countries all over the world, you are making market. So market making is number one in performance, because if you have a product that people will discover and start asking for, well, you are in the way to make a ton of money and do a lot of good if you do the thing thinking in, okay, what is what these people really need?
Yeah, exactly. So we mentioned, it's good that we mentioned the Roger Kaufman a couple of times. So tell us about the Kaufman Center, please.
Okay, let me see. I think I have something to
share.
Yeah, exactly. Let me go first to the specific. Let's start with the Performance Improvement Institute that houses the Kaufman Share.
Yep. Tell us what PII is and with Kaufman Center.
Well, basically, when we talk about leadership in Latin America, we are thinking in terms of two kinds of business. I was describing you the constant need for innovation, because we cannot apply here the models from the Harvard MBA. Because a Harvard MBA assumes that you have an existing, stable, solid, large business. Usually, what we say is, in business school, I have an MBA from Chicago University. In business school, what you learn is how to help companies that are aging to rejuvenate. So we are doing management geriatrics. But in emerging countries, we have to learn to do management pediatrics. So we are looking at young companies, new companies, and how can we help people develop new business as the ones I described. And we have a program called MBI, not MBA, Manager of Business Innovation. So how can we create a good business out of a social reality that will work here and it can work elsewhere? Because we encourage all the business innovators who develop business in countries that are poor countries to think of, you have to have a product in order to be successful that will be attractive for rich countries. So you can sell it there, like with the example of Tom Shoes. And the other area is social innovation is how can you fix problems in communities or cities, other important set of areas. And the one very common problem in areas like Detroit in the United States, Chicago, we have a south side, is there are neighborhoods that are extremely poor and they have all kinds of social problems. Nobody wants to live, and it's like a vicious circle. Nobody wants to live. The value of property falls, schools become worse, and so on. So one of the things that we work is with local governments to train and develop what we call managers of social innovation, to use performance technology, to combine elements of performance technology to develop neighborhoods. And that's one of the things we do in the Kaufman Center and the Performance Improvement Institute. Let me go a little further. Oh. For example, here you have apps we developed for some of our students, let's put it that way, developed for an area in Buenos Aires that is a slum. This is called Neighbors, the app. So when you go to a poor neighborhood, you feel, among other things, insecure. You are afraid that they will rob you or there will be some kind of violence. So this app helps neighbors to call and watch out over each other. So it makes, as you see in the left-hand side, safe neighbors. So when you are going to your house in these kind of neighborhoods, you have your cell phone. If you see something that you think is dangerous, you put an alarm and all your neighbors will turn on the lights, and that immediately reduce the crime rate, because you know, broken lights and darkness and lack of connection. So, but also when you live in a poor neighborhood, there is some kind of social stigma. You say, well, if they know that I'm living here, they will not hire me because they will think I'm dangerous. Well, what we do is with the city, we create also a jobs and services, you can see here. So with this app, people in the neighborhood can post offering their services. The city checks their backgrounds, so they guarantee that they are people with good records, and they get jobs in other neighborhoods. So this creates starts moving their own business. We have there, and also it helps to improve housing, because you can see, okay, I want to buy a house there. So you can see the house, you can get a price, or you can sell your house. So all these functions are in a single app called Neighbors. So it helps to keep you safe, helps you to get jobs and services, and help people from outside the neighborhood to go to the neighborhood and know that, for example, there is a country fair, or there is a restaurant there that is interesting. And they feel safe because they can make a reservation through the phone like they do. And they have delivery services now with the pandemic. And here you have on the right-hand side, one advanced example is Mercado Libre, that became the Amazon of South America. And it started also 10 years ago. Now it's one of the unicorns, billion-dollar company. So managers of business innovation try to put people, enable people to do this. We also work in pandemics. This is a mega region, Sonora, Arizona. We found there that tourism and other activities were hit very badly by the pandemics. So we started reinventing, managers of business innovation start reinventing and reorganizing existing business. For example, they created hotels were turned into facilities for retirees from the United States to be able to go to the beach, but not with a crowd, and to have medical support in Mexico. So they crossed from Arizona, and instead of selling the typical hotel, we started improving conditions to attract people coming in RVs, because with the pandemic, most Americans are afraid to go to sleep in a hotel, but those who have RVs carry their own bed. So we provided them facilities next to the beach so they can enjoy their own RVs, and that helped simultaneously to keep the hotels afloat by this transformation. So what we did is value chain events, town hall events. So we started by, as you can see, inviting people from all sectors, government, private companies, different industries, hospitality, manufacturing, universities, to get together and say, okay, how can we cope and progress under pandemic conditions? How can we deal together? And they started developing new value chains, reorganizing. For example, there was a company that usually was producing shows that they decided, okay, what we can do is offer services through the internet to United States companies that need digital programming, etc. So, and also showcase different places in the coast of Mar de Cortez, southern California, north of Mexico. And we use new techniques also, like cat whiskers, that I'm going to do a presentation on ISPI. That's a technique. You're familiar with Ishikawa diagram? The fish,
is that
the fishbone diagram?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Well, what we do is the opposite. So cat whiskers is, imagine that instead of having a fishbone that shows the causes, the cat has whiskers in front to prevent them from getting in trouble. So this is to analyze impact. What is going to happen if we do this? And this is like a detector that helps to detect black swans before they happen. For example, if we do this, what consequences could have and what reactions could have? And that corrects a lot of possible problems before they happen. So we use this technique to also benefit from, okay, we know that, for example, if we use handouts for people who are unemployed, but we put the level of the subsidies too high, these people will prefer not to work. And that will be a dependency problem in the making. So we have to look for other alternatives so that will not happen. And people start with this diagram. I'm going to do a session figuring out. And finally, the Kaufman Center is dedicated to promote or to showcase good examples of social impact. What are examples? What are the things we can improve? And social innovation, how they do it. So in social innovation, we look at the techniques, the models. In the Kaufman Awards, we look at, okay, what kind of impacts they produce. And also we have a social lab that tries to collect information of these examples. And we have what we call city doctors. City doctors programs we did in Buenos Aires, Arizona, Barcelona, Colón, Panama. This is basically using performance technology to fix neighborhoods or city problems. So we get together with people in the city and both private and business and city government, for example, and try to identify ways to improve the conditions in that specific area and get them to work together. So that's we call it city doctors, because what happens in the cities is usually people, they are attempts to fix parts of it. So we improve real estate, but what happens if we invest a lot of real estate, we raise the price of living, and you can have the problem of people leaving because rent is too high or property value is too high. And then you have a second problem that is basically a segregated city. So or for example, Airbnb. So Barcelona.
I'm going to mention that, Airbnb.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Barcelona call us because they have a serious problem with Airbnb.
Right.
They were basically dying of over-tourism. So we try to find ways to help protect the local business and the locals by organizing alternatives to Airbnb or regulations to Airbnb. So there were a lot of work with the local in Barcelona to help them recover. Now we are working in helping the business to adapt to the conditions of COVID. So they don't have the over-tourism now, but they have the problem of lack of revenue. So they have to look for new ways. So this is what the city doctors program try to do. And they also communicate, okay, look at what Barcelona did or look at what Buenos Aires did. So cities can look at equivalent performance models. So these are basically the things that the Kaufman Center does.
Right, right. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. And just a little anecdote that thank you for granting us the Roger Kaufman Award this year. And we're so honored to receive this award. Yeah, and thank you so much. That's really an honor because Roger Kaufman, as you know, he and I are friends, and he is really my old friend. And Roger was on this show last year, last May. At the beginning, he was the second guest on this show, and you are the 47th. So you're probably a year apart, but he was the first one. And yeah, and he really did a tremendous amount of contribution throughout his years of his devotion and dedication and hard work to the performance improvement cause, as a whole, globally, because he is recognized globally. And his name is so much known in not only the United States, but throughout the world. So the Kaufman Center is indeed, I really hope, this is me, a veteran professional, really hope that the Kaufman Center carries on his legacy, carries on his legacy and transcend his spirit to next generations of professionals who can, generate more kind of a mega thinking framework and use that systematic thinking to generate more benefits for social impact. So really, kudos to you for you to host the Kaufman Center. I know there's a lot of work, and each year, not only the award, but each year, to keep going is a lot of work already. So my hats off for you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you as well. And by the way, one of the things we do with the Kaufman Center is trying to collect this knowledge that is produced by the Kaufman awardees. So we like to have people like you continue to be our committee to select new award winners and also to identify and to communicate. That's why this year we are planning to publish a book about the social impact with the examples of produced by the Kaufman Award winners. We expect to have a chapter by you in the book.
Thank you. Thank you. And also, last two questions. I know I have a lot of other questions as well, as I had, at this point of time, I always have all the questions, the good old questions for our guests. Right now the pandemic hits very hard everybody globally. So how about Latin America? How they're holding up?
Well, interestingly, the pandemic is like a global experiment. It's usually in social sciences, the first thing they teach you is social sciences are not like natural sciences, because we cannot produce a global experiment. We cannot control the variables. Well, one of the strange things that the pandemic produces is that we have a global control experiment. So we have all over the world a situation that is imposed by the virus and the pandemic. And you can compare societal performances by looking at how each country is responding to the challenge, both in the terms of health and in terms of economy. And that is one thing that the pandemic is helping us, was also helping to modify or is catalyzing changes. For example, what we are doing now. We were basically so tied to our real estate base that we have to travel, take a plane, go the 10 hours we have in time zone difference, and in order to have a conversation like this. But now everybody is starting to connect much faster, so the cost of communication went down, and all of a sudden you can think of, okay, actually I can do a lot of different businesses with less, the entry level is also going down. So I think that one of the positive things that the pandemic produced is shattering all these glass ceilings that small business have to access large markets. And the opportunities for companies that play in the win-win kind of scenario, saying, okay, if we can make markets much faster and much easier than before, because we don't have to have a store, a physical store, do it in a location. So we can organize markets just basically by using applications, and people are starting to get used. So it's quite likely that after the pandemic, some things will never go back to the old form. They will continue to use this. So online shopping, for example, and those are great equalizers. But what it would have taken 10 years happened in one. So the challenge is now, okay, do we have a model of performance to work? That's why I coined the model e-performance. So how we use online technology to work, not just e-learning, because e-learning is about, okay, education online, but basically we can reach much wider audience by putting in the apps what Gloria Giri was to call. I was one of the pioneers in electronic performance support systems. In short,
EPSS.
EPSS, exactly. But apps are EPSS in steroids. Because before, to get an EPSS, you have to develop an entire application with computers. And now we are using cell phones, and we can get, think all the things you do with Google Maps.
Yeah. There's a new thing called MPSS. MP Mobile Performance Support System is developed by a PhD student from Florida State University, Florida State, where Roger taught, and she's also from China, and is a friend of mine for years.
Oh,
and
that's interesting.
She came up with the word MPSS, so Mobile Performance Support System instead of EPSS.
Can you send me contacts with him? Because I think it will be interesting if he has practical experiences for the Prahalad.
I will. After this show, I will send you her contacts and everything. Yep.
As you can see, one of the things I do constantly, I'm not a critic, I'm an admirer. So I look for things to admire. Because
everybody is creative in different ways, from different perspectives. Your application of the mega system, mega thinking, is a very creative and done excellent. I mean, generates excellent results. So I will do that. I'll bridge you up with that PhD candidate. The second last question: if you had a chance to start all over again, what would you have done differently?
Well, I think that
No, I mean, every time I ask this question, the guest will ponder a little bit. And,
yeah, of course. But one of the things I think I would have been less tied to my first plan. When I got into my PhD, etc., I had this idea that strategic planning. You make a big plan, and it's like a life plan. What happened is, halfway into my PhD, I had to do other things to make a living or to solve other problems. And those are the things that drove me into real progress. So I learned more by getting away from this original plan. So if I were to live again, I would say I would do this before. So the idea is, I think that Mike Tyson said that the best plan ends when you get a punch in your face. So once you have to, think about it. So I would like to get the punch earlier. So that way I would be able to look like I look now when I see
I would
so
agree.
many opportunities.
I would wish the same thing. Yeah.
By the way, a punch in the face when you're younger is heartless. You are. But anyway.
The earlier the better, actually. The earlier the better, because we pay the smallest amount of minimum amount of costs to get the same lesson years later. If
Exactly. You
have the later, the higher the cost and the price.
And the longer ROI.
If there isn't, if there is an ROI.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things in performance we have to look always, because some people confuse performance with results. And the results are, you have to look at the cost and over time. So if you keep looking at that, you say, okay, maybe I should change some things I do because the cost is getting too high for the reward.
Yeah. Thank you. This is great. Thank you. As a closing statement, do you have any advice to young practitioners?
I would say that one of the things I learned is that remember what is the first step in strategic thinking. And I always ask this question, and they answer things like needs assessment, context analysis, or defining strategic goals, ideal vision. And I said, no, actually the first step in good strategic thinking is a step backward. So you gain perspective. So don't engage immediately in action, just take a minute to think about the context of what you are looking at, because that is the moment that you can gain some wisdom, which is very important before using your reason.
I could not agree more with you more. After I asked this question, my answer to my own question was to daydream. Daydreaming sometimes is it's the same thing, step back and then really put everything into perspective and see what your situation is. And that's what you said. As I said, it's the same thing, I think. To daydream, to see, longer run. I've been in research of management theories for 10 years now. So what we found out that leaders believe to see. Followers must see to believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that's a very good one.
Yeah. So that's for our young practitioners. Do you want to be a leader? Or do you want to be a follower in the future? It's your own choice. But everything's laid in front of you. Mariano's years of dedication and the contribution and diligence in this field has shown that to think earlier, to think big and apply mega system does work. Even if it doesn't matter correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter how old you are, right? You can apply mega thinking system even you're in the 20s, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Roger didn't put any limits on the age. Right?
Exactly.
So think big, big, because when you think big, you can lead. And when you lead, you all have followers, you all have associates around you. And that's how you create a team to create bigger success.
Absolutely. And one important thing, it takes two to tango. Let's put an Argentinian note, which means it's always useful when you do your step backward. you take distance,
Right.
you daydream, just try to share with someone else to do the devil's advocate, to give you another perspective. I always look for, I mean, for example, I have Mariana or people like you. I try to establish a conversation so I can see, okay, maybe I'm not seeing something. I remember with John, for example, in Mexico, I always was telling John, please tell me, what did you see? And he always had a different vision that helped me to understand what I was really trying to do. Because again, it takes two to tango means that innovation requires like a ping pong match. You have to, together with the other one, get some kind of reaction in order to figure out, I'm testing this well. Maybe I'm too much. When you say taking time to dream, is we use the expression in English in US, give me a break, give you a break. Break you from what? From routine, from pressure, from hurry. Because when you get this break, you can get breakthrough. You can break through. Otherwise, you cannot.
Right. A break from inertia. Yeah,
exactly.
From inertia, from what you do, from habitat, create something new, think, and look at the same thing from a different perspective, from a different angle, and think twice, think differently, and sometimes think big. And then that's how you'll become a leader. And leaders need to see, and followers must see it to believe. That's what we found out. So anyway, well, thank you so much. This is inspiring. And thank you again for sharing all this information. Very, very valuable information that will make up a gap, or our knowledge gap about Latin America, what is going on, and also super excellent explanation or case showing of the mega thinking system and what you applied in different countries, and that's excellent. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Mariano. My hats off, and we hope to have this kind of session in the future more, and then share with our audiences. Thank you, and have a good night. That's my interview with Dr. Mariano Bernardez. How do you feel? I really like it. So we covered a lot of topics on Latin America. We talk about the learning development, performance improvement, leadership development, etc. in Latin America. And also he gave us some examples of how the Roger Kaufman's mega thinking, mega planning works, creates value in Latin America countries. Thank you, Dr. Bernardez, for your years and decades of dedication to this field, and we look forward to learn more from you in the future. Next week, we are going to have another international guru on the line. His name is the very famous Dr. Tim Brock. Tim has been in this field for several decades. He has been keynote speaker at forums and conferences, and he has done many projects and served about 5,000 organizations in over 60 countries. He is an expert in ROI, in learning management, in learning measurement. So next week, we're going to ask him a lot of questions about learning measurement. Can learning be truly measured? Why a business leader should believe in learning ROI, and also, of course, performance improvement. What is performance analytic? So next week will be very intense interview as well. So it's another learning opportunity for all of us. So until next week, please stay tuned, stay safe. Thank you, and good night.